Good morning. Good morning. Well, it may not be morning for you, but if it's morning, good morning. If it's not, good whatever time of the day it is. Welcome. We're on deck. This is Prep Test 85. Logical reasoning, section 2. Well, we're going to kick off with question number 23. 23, the issue. Which one of the following arguments exhibits flawed reasoning most similar to the flawed reasoning in the argument above? So, again, I'm focusing on the flawed reasoning. And after I read the argument, I need to be able to identify the nature of that flawed reasoning. One of the other choices is going to mimic that flawed reasoning. Okay, here's what I have. A gram of the artificial sweetener, aspartame, is much sweeter than a gram of sugar. I got it? Okay. All soft drinks that are sweetened with sugar are, of course, sweet. So, those sweetened with aspartame must be even sweeter. No, but let me keep reading. Those people who regularly drink soft drinks sweetened with aspartame will develop a preference for extremely sweet products. So it seems to me the major flaw is in the second sentence, and you can express that flaw in a number of ways. So when you say, yes, we say that gram for gram, aspartame is sweeter than sugar. That's fine. To take that fact and then work it to, and so therefore, like soft drinks that are sweetened with sugar are, of course, sweet. Those sweetened with aspartame must be sweeter. No, that doesn't work. So you try to say, so what is the flaw? And the flaw appears to be that simply because the part of a whole has a characteristic doesn't mean the whole will have that characteristic. So yeah, I mean, gram for gram, aspartame is sweeter than sugar. It doesn't follow from that if you sweeten your drink with aspartame, the drink's going to be sweeter than had you sweetened it with sugar, because you might use a lot more sugar than you did aspartame. So that's that's what I'm looking for. You have a part of a substance, part of a whole. The part itself has a characteristic, right? Which is that in aspartame, it's more intense, right? And then you conclude merely by using it, the outcome itself must be more intense. And so I've got two products with a common characteristic, right? Sweetness. One is more concentrated than the other, more intense than the other, and therefore you say the drink must be sweeter. Okay. Let's see what I have here. A, people sometimes develop a preference for foods they initially dislike. Okay, maybe I didn't like coffee, now I like it. So if you dislike a new food, then you will eventually develop a preference for it. I'm not seeing the parallel nature of A at all. And again, if you don't have something formed in your mind and you start looking at the answer choices, you're toast. So I'm looking for, there's got to be a common characteristic between two things. One characteristic is more intense than the other, right? And therefore the person concludes that there's more value in that as a whole, which need not be. Okay, B. Most people own more books than televisions. Okay, so I guess you could compare books to televisions. Moreover, it takes longer to read a book than to watch an episode of a television show. Okay. So most people must spend more time reading than they do watching television. And again, it's really kind of hard to explain. That's just not taking two comparable things, identifying a characteristic within the two comparable things, right? And then extrapolating from that the thing with the most intense characteristic remains that way. But I'm just not seeing it. C. Joe's piggy bank has only pennies in it, and Maria has nickels. Okay, so there are two things: pennies and nickels. They're both coins. Nickels are worth more than pennies. Well, okay, now that looks better. just as aspartame is much more sweeter, and that much more is the actual language there in the argument, just as aspartame is much more sweeter than sugar, this is that nickels are worth much more. So this is worth as opposed to sweetness than pennies. It therefore follows that there is more money in Maria's piggy bank than in Joe's, and Maria's has the nickels in it, and that is parallel, because here we have two common objects, the coins, right? Nickel and a penny. One has greater value than the other, which is the nickel, and therefore the person here concludes that there must be more money in that bank, which again goes to, because the part has a certain characteristic, the whole must also have that characteristic. So C is the answer. If I look at D, Stephanie likes hot summer weather much more than Catherine does. It's Catherine, and there's two people, but only one thing, hot summer weather here. So the place where Stephanie grew up must have had more days of hot summer weather than the place where Catherine grew up. I see almost nothing parallel in that. And E, Grandma has a much shorter drive to work than Abdul. So Grandma's estimate of the average commute for workers in the country as a whole is less likely to be lower than Abdul's. I don't have a clue how you would pick E. So the answer to question number 23 is C from Caligula. And just be careful. I mean, that stuff is time-consuming and difficult. Question number 24. My mission here is to strengthen the argument. Okay, what do I got? If minimum wage levels are low, employers have a greater incentive to hire more workers than to buy productivity-enhancing new technology. So I'm introduced to the minimum wage, and I'm informed that if the minimum wages are low, there's a disincentive to invest in productivity-enhancing new technology. Next sentence. As a result, productivity growth, which is necessary for a higher average standard of living, falls off. So now there's a connection between a low minimum wage and productivity, the absence of productivity growth. I got it. Conversely, high minimum wages levels result in higher productivity. Okay, so there's the other side of the coin. So if I pay more minimum wage, then my productivity level of the workers go up. Thus, so here's my conclusion, this: raising our currently low minimum wage levels would improve the country's overall economic health more than any hiring cutbacks triggered by the raise would harm it. So there's a lot in that conclusion, but you get the tension, right? The tension is lower wages and the absence of emphasis on productivity. You pay high wages, you need more productivity. And then the conclusion is raising the currently low minimum wage would improve the country's overall economic health, okay, more than any hiring cutbacks triggered by the raise would harm it. So I'm now on the side of, since I want to strengthen this argument, I'm on the side of raising the currently low minimum wage. And the reason I'm on that side is that's going to improve the country's overall economic health more than any hiring cutbacks triggered by the raise would harm it. Okay, I got it. So let's see what A says. A says productivity growth in a country usually leads to an eventual increase in job creation. Okay. And yeah, that strengthens the argument, because you're saying that raising the low minimum wage, so now I'm paying, so if I pay $3.15 an hour instead of $2.80 an hour, that's going to improve overall economic health. I got that, okay, but I'm paying more, and that's going to benefit more than it's actually, because there's a drawback to that, right? Which is if I'm paying more, I'm hiring fewer people. Okay. So, but this argument is the overall economic health by raising the wages is going to offset the cutbacks that are triggered. So the cutbacks are going to be, there's going to be a raise. You're going to raise unemployment. So that argument is, we want to say, yeah, that raising the unemployment is not as is a less negative than promoting overall economic health is a positive. So we're willing to put up with somewhat higher unemployment, at least initially. And then we're looking to strengthen that. And A says, well, now hang on here, the productivity growth in the country usually leads to an eventual increase in job creation. So the productivity growth we got, in fact, now leads to a higher employment rate. So yeah, is the answer. B, the economist country has seen a slow but steady increase in its employment rate over the last decade. Okay, that's nice. C, a country's unemployment rate is a factor in determining its average living standards, but none of that this has got to, again, the core issue here is, do you pay people more and get more productivity, but have higher unemployment, or not? D, the economist country currently lags behind other countries in the development of new technology. I just don't see the relevance of that at all. And E, productivity enhancing new technology tends to become quickly outdated. Well, that would weaken the argument. So the answer to question number 24 is A for Augustus. Question number 25. The issue here is the claim that when something valuable costs no money, you get overconsumption and long lines, plays which one of the following roles in the mayor's argument. So it's a role in the argument question. Let's have at it. Here's what the mayor says. Periodically, an ice cream company will hold the free ice cream day as promotion. Yes, I'm aware of that. Showing up may not cost you any money, but it sure does cost you time. Sure, that's good. Okay. We learn from this that it sure does cost you time. We learn from this, and here's the magic language, that when something valuable costs no money, you get overconsumption in the long lines. Okay, that seems to be a general statement. That's what you get. It would apply to things other than just the ice cream. So it's general principle. I'm reading it as a general principle. Okay. Currently, those who drive to work complain about the congestion they face in their rush hour commute. So now we're nowhere near the ice cream shop, right? So we're going to use the statement that we came up with when something valuable costs no money, you get overconsumption, is now going to apply to a different scenario. Okay, so now I'm directed to people driving to work, and they complain about the congestion they face in rush hour commutes. Next sentence, what is needed is a system for charging people. You see, it's free right now, right? So what is needed is a system for charging people for the use of roads during rush hour. So we want to make it so that's not free. Then rush hour congestion will abate. See, stop for a second. So, to me it's clear that clause that we've been directed to, it connects the two pieces. And the argument's conclusion is what's needed, right? That next to last sentence, what is needed is a system for charging people for the use of roads during rush hour. That's the argument's conclusion, right? So everything else has something to do with the conclusion. And it seems to me the role of this particular phrase is it is kind of a general statement, because it applies to both of these very different situations, which the purpose of it is to support the argument's main conclusion. And that's it, I'm done. So let's see what A says. It's a hypothesis that is rejected in favor of the hypothesis stated in the argument's overall conclusion. That's just dead wrong. B, it is a concession made to those who dispute an analogy drawn in the argument. It's not a concession. It's laying the predicate for the validity of the connection of the analogy. C, it helps establish the importance of the argument's overall conclusion but is not offered as evidence for that conclusion. Well, no, it is offered as evidence for that conclusion. It's the principle upon which the conclusion rests. D, it is a general claim, so that's more consistent with the principle thing that I came up with. It is a general claim used in support of the argument's overall conclusion. Bada bing, bada boom. And certainly if that were A, I would pick A, and I'd be on my way. Remember, it's a psychometric test. E, it is the overall conclusion. It's not the overall conclusion. Okay, so the answer to number 25 is D for Drusus. And let's take a look at question number 26. Which one of the following, if true, adds the most support for the conclusion? So let me get to the conclusion, identify the conclusion, and this would be a premise that would cause that conclusion to be more compelling. Okay, what do I got here? The advertising campaign for Roadwise Auto Insurance is notable for the variety of its commercials, which range from straightforward and informative to funny and offbeat. So this is very readable. You know, I mean, maybe this is not going to be that big a deal. Okay, I got it. Next sentence. This is unusual in the advertising world, where companies typically strive for uniformity in advertising in order to establish a brand identity with their target demographic. Okay, I got that. It's unusual. That it's more common here to have a uniformity in whatever that message is to appeal to your demographic. Final sentence. But in this case, variety is a smart approach, and that's the argument's conclusion. Since purchases of auto insurance are so demographically diverse. Okay, so this advertising campaign makes a world of sense. We want to support that position. It is different, so we acknowledge that it is different, and the word demographic is what's connecting the second sentence and the third sentence. So if we're going to support this, it must be the case that there's a reason why when your demographics, when you're appealing to people my age and you're appealing to people my daughter's ages, right? Very different demographics. We want to support that. It does make sense to have one commercial targeted towards me with a certain theme, and then one targeted towards my daughters with a very different theme. Okay, let's see what we have here. Advertising campaigns designed to target one demographic sometimes appeal to a wider group of people than expected. Well, that hurts our argument, right? Because we're not doing that. We're doing the opposite. B, consistent efforts to establish a brand identity are critical for encouraging product interest and improving company recognition. Well, that's really not helpful either, because we're not about, if you're saying that here the brand identity is going to be impacted by the demographics. It's going to have a different identity in different demographics. C, fewer people are influenced by auto insurance commercials than by commercials for other type of products. Why in heaven's name would anybody pick C? D, advertising campaigns that target one demographic often alienate people who are not part of that target demographic. And if you break that down, that does make sense. Advertising campaign that targets one demographic, so if you just target one, right, you often alienate people who are not part of that target. So you've made the commercial for my daughters, and I'm 30 years beyond them, right? So yeah, if you just made the one, you would alienate me. So that's the answer. And therefore you wouldn't do that, right? And therefore you would target independent audiences. And E, so all right, let's read E. Efforts to influence a target demographic do not pay off when the content of the advertising campaign falls short. So this is not about content. So the answer to question number 26 is D, D for Drusus.